Like some challenges here.
I want to talk about, you mentioned openness.
Yeah.
I remember very specifically, maybe the first rehearsal we ever had in 2012, which was for Stray Ashes stuff, songs. And I think we were at Anthony Lamarca's apartment the first time. And I remember playing You Always Keep Around. And I had heard the song. I knew basically what I was supposed to be doing, but I didn't know it all that well. And I remember a point where you were like, the bass drum goes right here and the tambourine goes right here, and it was a moment for me to realize, oh, he knows every note, which I should have already known because you played it all and you made it by yourself.
Yeah.
But it was a jarring thing to realize that you were hearing what I was doing and that you knew exactly where everything was supposed to be.
Right.
And not that you were too forceful about it, or that I felt like you were being a dictator about it or anything, but it was interesting, and it just feels like, I guess it's also establishing trust, like we talked about with Dan, and establishing more of an openness over time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we still collaborate. For me, on drum parts, I love being able to bounce ideas and hear your input and try things and come to a place, but it definitely feels, especially with this record, I think because we had less time to rehearse, that there is more of an openness to trust me and probably everyone involved to do their thing.
Yeah, well, I find that as you do something more and you get better at it, you also know better how to choose people and have an intuition about who you're choosing to do stuff with. And with you and I, for instance, we've been collaborating so long that I know that you have good things to contribute, and that I should just give you room to do that. The same was true with Logan. Like, I wanted to play with Logan because he's great, and he does really inventive stuff that I could never think of, or that I could never think to ask him to do.
Right.
So I think it's that if you choose the people that you think are right for it, and you give them more room, you're bound to get a better result, and you can always shape it a little bit, and it doesn't take that much. So I think that's a growth since that first time we were playing together. I mean, that album was actually a good example of how controlling I was, because I made it mostly alone. I had some parts added later that I felt were missing or that I couldn't contribute well enough. But I wanted to try to make something entirely alone because I didn't know anybody at the time that was the right person to contribute.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe having done it all yourself, it allowed you to recognize what you were going to want from other people. It allowed openness to...
Yeah, you know your limitations, and if you're playing everything and you hear where you're limited and where your signature performance is actually worth something. Yeah.
I feel like there's a level of, I don't know if it's understatement, but this record feels a little more intimate in several ways. I think for me, there's lyrically, which I'm sure we'll get into, but even sonically, there aren't any big rockers like In the Sand or 6 and 5. And I think even just, I think of making records with Dan and him being very hi-fi and creating there's a real sonic landscape almost on each instrument. And this one feels a little more focused. You mentioned the kind of 70s Rumors drum sounds. I feel like the drums are a little tighter and every instrument is really carrying its weight, if that makes sense, rather than fitting into this broader sonic landscape. Do you feel that way, or was that a conscious choice, or is that how it just worked out for these songs?
You mean in the sense that it's a different landscape that is not quite as... well, I guess in terms of the rockers, that's just a preference of where I'm... The types of songs that I end up writing, I don't really have any control over. So when I was writing those more aggressive and more urgent songs. Some of those I was writing in studio space that I had, and I was playing a lot with louder guitar, and it was just the mood that I was in to make more noise and to, I guess it was to release whatever angst I was feeling. And these songs ended up being a bit quieter and more ballads. And in terms of the soundscape, I wanted to leave a little more air and do have the arrangements be a bit more simple, which they didn't end up necessarily being more simple. They just ended up being more sparse.
Right.
And I think that was just refreshing to me at the time that I made it. Just not adding things for the sake of it, like Dan and I would add some things to a song, see how it added, and just like, well, what happens if we just take it away? And then you're listening to it without anything, and sometimes it's hard to decide, but we just made that decision a few times. We're just like, just leave it out. Just leave it out and just leave it kind of vacant.
It leaves room for vocal performance to take over lyrics. I think that's what I mean by intimate, direct. Kind of the message is in the vocal delivery and in the lyrics, and that's really a prominent thing. It really feels like we got to a place where the music was truly supportive of the song for this. Have you made any kind of conscious effort to change your focus in or hone your vocal delivery as you've gone on? Was there any?
I guess it hasn't been a conscious thing, but I notice it when I listen back that there's a bit more dancing in the vocal performance, and that I've just gotten a little bit better at singing over time, and I think that's just from playing live a lot. And I never practiced singing, and I prefer to not be too aware of it, which means that at times I've lacked control in that way, and but I've gotten better with that over time. And there's a lot of words on this album, and so it's never deliberate with figuring out how to sing the stuff. It's just how it was going over time, like practicing them and playing the songs. It just came out that way.
Yeah. Is there, when you're recording the vocals, I'm never around for that. Is there a lot of back and forth with Dan, or you
about the performance?
Yeah.
I'll ask him for his feedback. Just if he's buying it. Usually I feel that myself. If you get in, how it is. If you're in your head, or sometimes you're having a great take, feels good, and you don't have to do many. And sometimes it takes a little while because there's the pressure. It's kind of like doing a thing like this. There's pressure. You feel like you want to get it right, and then there's the characters that can come into your head.
I don't feel any pressure.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, it's how that stuff is. It's and that's the kind of thing that you're telling yourself when you're doing the takes, and it's unnatural singing with headphones on, and the music's no longer moving through you. You're not playing. That's the other thing for me. While playing and singing is important, and I'm when we're cutting the final vocals, I'm usually not playing something, so that it's hard to get that feeling. So he's good at telling me, if he thinks it's where it should be, and I'm usually, the minute I listen to it, I know. Sometimes I come back and I hear it and I think, I don't know. I just don't like whoever it is that's coming back at me. Just like I don't relate to it. So it's kind of just going on gut with that stuff.
Have you ever done it while playing guitar, or found that you needed to for any particular performance?
A few songs where, like with I Never Knew, that was actually from the demo, and I performed that one live. And we tried recutting it, or I think actually we didn't try recutting it, but we just decided not to, because in the past, that happened actually with the last record with All These Kids I Never Knew. I had to cut the demo, and I recorded it kind of simplistically with single mic on the piano, and we tried to redo it. We had a really nice piano and tried to redo it separately and cut it a little more sleek, and it didn't work. I didn't like the performance, and it wasn't good, so we used the demo version.
Yeah.
So some of those songs now I know when they're really delicate and it's just going to be a sparse instrumentation, sometimes the feeling comes across better if it's just done live, played together, and then you're just dealing with what you're dealing with sonically. But if the mood is right, you can kind of give and take with that stuff.